Hello friends at the Danville Child Development Center. I was asked to do some music for you, and this is July. This is when we're celebrating Danville Heritage every year, so I'm honored to do some songs just for you kids at the DCDC. And I have a couple special instruments for you. I'm going to play some guitar for you in just a minute, and then I have a few other things picked out. But why don't I get going right away with a song? This is a song about trees. I love trees. And it asks you if you could be any kind of tree. What kind of tree would it be? And I'd love to hear your answers. So if you guys get a chance to tell me what kind of trees you'd be, I'd love to hear it. Here we go. Be anyone but me, wonder who I would be. And if you could be any type of tree, tell me, what would you be? Maybe the white pine, tall among the rest. It's been called the king of this forest. Or solid hickory, you don't bend before you break. One thing's for sure, trees make no mistakes. Oh, if I could be anyone but me, I wonder who I would be. And if you could be any type of tree, tell me, what would you be? The hemlock, yeah, I'd take that. I cool off the trout streams up in cherry flats. Oh, now that cherry, well, that wouldn't be bad. Highest dollar in the woods, maybe I ought to rethink that. Oh, if I could be anyone but me, I wonder who I would be. And if you could be any type of tree, tell me, what would you be? Are you solid where you are, like the spruce in this guitar? I bet you got a tale to tell. Oh, good night, locust, adios, American elm. A moment of silence for the chestnut and its realm. Tomorrow's bringing those shadberry blooms. These woods are calling, calling home to you. Oh, if I could be anyone but me, I wonder who I would be. And if you could be any type of tree, tell me, what would you be? Right, that's an oldie, but I love singing that song. I don't even know what kind of tree I would be. And I don't know if I introduced myself to y'all kids. My name is Wagner. I grew up right here in Danville. I still live here in Danville. And I got a pretty cool map behind me. I love maps. I don't know if you guys like maps. I like maps. But I am a full-time guitar player in the summers usually. I go all over Pennsylvania and other places in America, and I travel and I play songs. And we're not doing any of that this summer, because of the pandemic that has all the festivals shut down for safety. We were trying to make sure everyone's being safe. So all the festivals that I normally go and play concerts at are canceled this year. So, and I'm not sorry they're canceled. I think it was a good decision. But what it means is I'm not playing music in front of people. Instead, I get to do these private concerts in front of a camera for you guys. It's not quite the same thing as if I came there in person, but it's the next best thing. But I'm just like you. I'm a kid from Danville. I guess I'm a grown kid now. Well, let's do another guitar song before we switch instruments. This is a fun song about the woods, but instead of being a song about the trees, it's a song about one of my favorite animals, the bear. I love black bears. We have them here in Danville. I bet some of you have seen them. And we have one here, lives by my house. These are his woods. But this is not a song I wrote. This is what you call a traditional song. A traditional song is a song that the truth is we don't know who wrote it. Traditional just means it's a folk song that's been passed from person to person to person. And a lot of times, every time it gets passed, the words change a little bit. In fact, it makes me think of a game. Have you ever played the game where someone thinks of a sentence and you get all the boys and girls in a line and they whisper it into the ear of the first person? And then they're supposed to whisper that sentence to the next person. And then they whisper the sentence to the next person. And when it finally gets down to the last person in the line, that person is supposed to say the sentence. And it's usually all changed and mixed up. Sometimes it's similar, but sometimes it's pretty mixed up. It's a fun game. And that's kind of how folk songs work. Who knows who wrote this song? And it's gotten changed around a bit. In fact, even when I sing it, I changed a little bit. But it's a song about a bear named Slewfoot. Slewfoot. And I like to do it real fast here, so hope you enjoy it. Bear tracks, looking back at me. You better get their rifle before it's too late. That bear got another pig and he headed for the gate. He's big around the middle, he's broad across the rump. He runs 90 miles an hour, he takes 30 feet a jump. Ain't never been caught, he ain't never been treed. Some folks say he looks a lot like me. I saved up my money and I bought me some bees, and I started making honey way up in the trees. I cut down the trees, but the honey's all gone. Old Slewfoot, he done made himself at home. He's big around the middle, he's broad across the rump. He runs 90 miles an hour, he takes 30 feet a jump. He ain't never been caught, he ain't never been treed. Some folks say he looks a lot like me. Well, winter's coming on and it's 40 below. The river froze over, so where can he go? We run him in a hollow, we chase him into a well. We catch him in the bottom just to listen to him yell. He's big around the middle, he's broad across the rump. He runs 90 miles an hour, he takes 30 feet a jump. Never been caught, he ain't never been treed. Some folks say he looks a lot like me. Ooh, an old bear song. One of the clues that tells me that song is real old is he says, I saved up my money and I bought me some bees, and I started making honey way up in the trees. I cut down the trees, but the honey was all gone. Old Slewfoot, he done made himself at home. In the really old days, people didn't keep bees the way we do nowadays with a bee box. You know, you get a wooden box and you can raise bees and take care of them. In the old days, people would look for hives in trees and they'd chop down the tree, they'd kill the tree, and they'd pull out all the honey. And in some cases too, I've read they didn't know how to get the honey without getting stung, and they would drown the whole hive, and they'd kill all the bees in the old days to get the honey. And finally people realized that was a really dumb idea, because if you kill all the bees, they can't make any more honey. Plus it's not real nice to the bees. So we've come up with all kinds of cool ways to keep the bees calm. I bet some of you know the secret to keeping bees calm. It's smoke. So a beekeeper will have a device that puts out a little bit of smoke, and they'll smoke the hive just a little bit. And the bees think they're getting into a forest fire, and they calm down and they stay in the hive and they stay calm. They think they're waiting out a forest fire. My wife and I used to have bees, and I watched her do it. I didn't help. I don't love getting real close to bees. That doesn't mean I want to see them killed, but I don't like getting real close to bees. But my wife would go out and she'd smoke the hive and they'd calm down and she could pull out the honeycomb and things. Pretty cool. So that tells me that that's an old song, because that person in that song was doing it the really old-fashioned way, chopping down a tree to get at the bees. Well, let's switch instruments. I'm going to put the guitar down. The guitar is neat, though. I will point out the guitar came to America probably from Spain. Its origins are Spanish, the country of Spain. And so how in the world did it eventually work its way into American popular music? Probably when the Spanish were coming into Mexico and even southern United States, but more so Mexico, the guitar got planted there and it became part of that culture. And then eventually, well, even use the map behind me, eventually it comes up from Mexico into Texas and into America. Hundreds of years ago, but that's where the guitar comes from. So I know what instrument I want to use. It's one of my favorite instruments. What is this thing? Yeah, this is a banjo. And the banjo comes from Africa. It has its roots in Africa. There's all kinds of similar instruments in Africa. Although it's true that the American version of the banjo is kind of unique. It's kind of hard to see, but it has a metal tone ring, and that metal tone ring is American. And it now has a plastic top, almost like a drum top. Picked up a hammer, and I'm trying to find a key of a song I'd like to do for you. Okay, we're going to do I think I'll switch keys here. So what you hear me doing, I'm singing and making sure that the song is going to be in a key that I can sing in. And what I'm determining is this key is G. And that's not going to be a good one for me to sing this song in. So I'm going to use a device called a capo. And it's a clamp that I'm going to put on the string. See how that works? Let's try C. I like C a lot. And what it just did is it made my string shorter. And by making it shorter, it makes it a different note. And John Henry, that's the key of C. That works for me. Okay, I'm going to play a song on the banjo and sing it. This is one of my favorites. It's called John Henry, and it too is a traditional folk song, which means we don't know who wrote it. We're pretty sure there was a man named John Henry, and he worked for the railroad, and his job was to help put the railroad through a mountain. Okay, they would do that by making a tunnel through the mountain. And in the old days, they did that just like we mined iron ore here in Danville. You needed a two-man crew, one guy to swing the sledgehammer and the other guy to turn the drill bit. And in fact, if you look at the Danville Ironman logo, it's a guy holding a sledgehammer, right? That's exactly how you started mining iron ore, and it's how John Henry would have driven a tunnel through the mountain. So you'd swing that sledgehammer into the drill bit, and the guy holding the drill bit, every time you hit it, he turns it about a quarter turn. Turn, turn. Now, can you imagine how dangerous this would be? You're down in a dark tunnel, whether it's one of the iron mines here in Danville or whether you're a railroad worker building a tunnel with John Henry. You're in a dark tunnel. You can barely see. It's hard, hard to move around. The space is small. And one guy is holding the drill bit really close to his head because that's all the room there is. And the other guy is swinging a sledgehammer at that drill bit. So one of my favorite lines, I want you to listen for it in this song. John Henry says to the shaker is the man holding the drill bit, "Shaker, you had better pray, for if I miss that 6 feet of steel, tomorrow's going to be your burying day." In other words, if I miss with my sledgehammer, I'm going to kill you by accident. I'm going to hit you in the head. So, working in the mines was dangerous and working in the railroad tunnels was dangerous. Well, I have good news. John Henry did not miss the drill bit, and he did not hurt his shaker, his friend. He didn't hurt. But what you're going to hear happen in the song is the boss invented a machine that could drill, and it was called a steam drill. And it didn't need two men to swing a sledgehammer and turn the drill bit. Instead, it used a steam power, and it just drilled into the rock. And it put people like John Henry, it put him out of work because no longer did they have a job drilling and blasting in the tunnels. So in the song, John Henry says, "I think I can drill faster than that machine." And the boss says, no way, this is the newest thing out there, the steam drill. You're not gonna be able to beat this. So I'm gonna let you listen to the song and you hear what happens. They have a contest. John Henry against the machine. John Henry, when he was a baby, sitting on his mama's knee, he picked up a hammer in his little right hand, said, hammer gonna be the death of me, Lord, Lord, hammer gonna be the death of me. Well, some said he's born down in Texas, others said he's born up in Maine. I just think he was a Pennsylvanian man, was a leader of a steel driving chain gang, leader of a steel driving gang. John Henry, he said to his shaker, shaker, you had better pray, for if I miss that 6 feet of steel, tomorrow's gonna be your burying day, Lord, Lord, tomorrow's gonna be your burying day. Then the captain, he said to John Henry, I'm gonna bring my steam drill around, I'm gonna bring my steam drill out on the job, it's gonna whop that steel on down, Lord, Lord, whop that steel on down. John Henry, he says to that captain, you know a man ain't nothing but a man, and before I let that machine take my job, I think I'll die with a hammer in my hand, Lord, Lord, die with that hammer in my hand. John Henry was working on the right side, and the steam drill was working on the left. You know he beat that steam drill out on the job, but he hammered him poor self to death, Lord, Lord, he hammered him poor self to death. Then they took John Henry from the tunnel, and they laid him in the sand, and every locomotive that come rolling down the line said, yonder lays a steel driving man, Lord, Lord, yonder lays a steel driving man. Oh, yonder lays a steel driving man, Lord, Lord, yonder lays a steel driving man. The 5-string banjo and the story of John Henry. And if you were listening, John Henry won. I don't remember all the words, but there's even a cool song about John Henry's wife. I think it's called the Ballad of John Henry's Wife. And it's a neat song about when women were fighting for the right to vote and to have equal rights in this country about 100 years ago. And in the story, as I recall, she picks up John Henry's hammer and she keeps driving steel just like a man. So pretty cool song, pretty cool idea. This is the next instrument I want to show you. Wait till you see this. This is the oldest known stringed instrument on the planet. Not this one, I made this one last year, but it's called a mouth bow. And mouth bows are thousands of years old. It's a stringed instrument, and it's the first stringed instrument on the planet. And it should remind you of a bow and arrow, because that's probably what it was. Hunters would sit around the fire at night, and they found if they put this up to their mouth, they can get a sound out of it if they pluck it and change the shape of their mouth. So listen to this. So this is what our ancestors have been making music on for thousands of years. Think of this as the first guitar, the first fiddle, the first banjo. If it wasn't for this, none of those other stringed instruments would exist. Even the piano, it's a stringed instrument. So I'm going to play you a song using the mouth bow, and it's going to sound a little weird. I know some of you are probably going to giggle. I did the first time I heard it because it sounds different, but it's kind of neat to think that, wow, this is what songs sounded like thousands of years ago. And I do use a guitar pick. It makes it a little bit louder, but Catch a fish in the Susquehanna, catch a fish in the Susquehanna, catch a fish in the Susquehanna, sit on the bank in the mud and the sand. Sit right down, cast float, sit right down, cast float. Sit right down and cast float. I've seen those bass jump in the boat. Isn't that a cool sound? So that's a mouth bow. Who knows? Maybe you guys can even figure out a way to make one. They're not real fancy. You just need a piece of wood with some tension on it and some kind of a string. And I'm holding it right up to my cheek. I'm not kissing it. It's not all wet. I'm on the outside of my cheek. Can you see that? It's pressing right up against my cheek here. And I'm changing the shape of my mouth so that the echo chamber is different. All right, back to the guitar. I want to thank you for asking me to do a few songs for you. I wish I could be there in person. I also wish I could be out playing my concerts all over the country like I normally am, but still, it's pretty special to me to be a Danville boy who grew up here in Danville, and I get to sing to you kids from Danville. That's pretty special to me. So I hope you enjoy these songs, and I hope you keep the stories alive. I need you to keep that story of John Henry alive. That's how folk music works. I've now told you about these songs, and your job is to remember the stories and keep the stories alive and tell your friends and family members the story of John Henry. Let's see here. Danville is famous for a lot of things, but one of the things we did is we made the very first railroad track, which is called a T-rail, in America. We did it in 1845. That doesn't mean we invented it. It was actually from England, but we didn't know how to make it. And so if we wanted to build railroads here in America, we had no choice but to import English iron railroad track. And you can imagine how expensive that was to make it in England, put it on a ship, and sail it across the ocean. So when Danville figured out how to make a T-rail here in Danville using anthracite coal from the nearby coal mines, that was a big deal. I mean, it really was a big thing for America and independence. From that point on, America was able to build its own railroads affordably. And again, I got the map behind me. It's what allowed us to build a railroad across the entire country. It's called the Transcontinental Railroad, and it connected the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast. So I think I want to sing you a song about trains. I'm just trying to think which one I want to do for you. Oh, I'll do you this one. The first one I started thinking of. It's a song about a train wreck. Because we all know if you get going too fast, what can happen. And this is a song about a railroad engineer, true story, down in North Carolina. And he was late. And instead of just accepting that he's going to be late, he tried to make up for lost time by going extra fast. And he wrecked. And the story became a song, and the song actually was typed up into sheet music. And even though it's well over 100 years ago, people didn't have digital devices and recordings. People could write a song and they'd put it on paper, and then that paper would get copied and sent around, and people who could read music could play it on their piano or their guitar. And this song became a hit. I mean, and what that means is, even though there were no televisions or there's certainly no internet, it meant people all over the country were playing and singing this song in their house based off the sheet of paper that they had gotten, and they were all singing the same song. And it's called Wreck of the Old 97. It's a true story, and I've actually been to the site. I've been to the mountain in North Carolina where the wreck happened. It's a steep mountain. Thanks for listening to me. This is going to be my last song for y'all. Well, they gave him his orders down in Monroe, Virginia, saying, Steve, you're way behind time. This is not 38, no, it's old 97, gotta put her in through Spencer on time. Well, he turned and he said to his blacked up greasy fireman, shovel on a little more coal. You just watch as we cross that white oak mountain, you can watch old 97 roll. It's a mighty rough road from Lynchburg down to Caroline on that 3-mile grade. It was on that grade that he lost his air brakes, and I saw what a jump he made. He was going down that hill making 90 miles an hour when his whistle broke into a scream. He was found in a wreck, his hand on the throttle, scalded by the steam. Of the old 97. Boys and girls, thanks for listening to me. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope maybe I've inspired some of you to get into folk music. Get a guitar, get a piano, or if you have access. I realize you don't just run out and get a piano, but if you have access to a piano or a harmonica, or maybe you can make a mouth bow, all these ideas, or maybe you can just sing. Some of the coolest ways folk songs stay alive is someone just singing it from one person to the other. Have a great rest of the summer, and I hope to see you all in person. Thanks for listening to my music.